Part 5. The Cost of Victory. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the dimensional rift. Space itself looked wrong here. Reality bent and twisted, creating impossible geometries that hurt to look at directly. And the harvesters were waiting. Hundreds of them. More than intelligence had predicted. They had been multiplying, creating new entities from the technology they had consumed. Each one represented the absorbed knowledge of dozens of council ships. Captain Daejung watched them on his displays. They knew we were coming. They've been adapting, Dr. Bora said from her station. Learning from every encounter. They're not just hunting us anymore. They're anticipating us. The harvesters struck first. They phased into the middle of the fleet formation, targeting the largest ships. 2 Corvash dreadnoughts that had joined the mission were torn apart within seconds. The harvesters had learned to target command ships to decapitate leadership. But humans didn't fight with command ships leading from the center. Human vessels scattered like a school of fish, breaking in every direction. No formation, no predictable pattern, just chaos. The harvesters tried to adapt, but adaptation requires pattern recognition. There was no pattern to recognize. All wings engage at will, Daejung ordered. Make them chase you. Draw them away from the rift. Commander Taewon led 30 ships in a direct assault on the harvester forces. It was a suicide mission, and everyone aboard those vessels knew it. His job was to be loud, to be obvious, to make the harvesters focus on him instead of the main objective. His ships broadcast on all frequencies. They used every weapon they had. They made themselves impossible to ignore. The harvesters took the bait. Dozens of them phased toward Taewon's force, sensing an easy victory. Taewon's fleet fought brilliantly. They used the same tactics that had kept humanity alive through countless wars. Hit and run, ambush, using terrain for cover. 3 harvesters were destroyed before the others adapted. Then the cost came due. Taewon watched his ships die one by one, crews he had trained, people he had known for years. They died buying time for the mission, died so others could reach the rift. His flagship took damage, atmosphere venting from a dozen hull breaches. He knew he had minutes at most. He opened a final communication to Daejung. Make it count, old friend. Taewon activated his ship's engines to full power and aimed directly at the largest harvester. His ship accelerated to relativistic speeds in seconds. The resulting explosion when he struck the harvester was visible from 3 star systems away. 4 harvesters died in that explosion. Taewon and his entire crew with them. On the Pathfinder, Daejung closed his eyes briefly. He had served with Taewon for 20 years. Had saved his life twice. Had been saved by him 3 times. Now his oldest friend was gone. But there was no time to grieve. Lieutenant Jiwoo was making her run toward the neutron star. She flew a small shuttle, barely larger than a fighter craft. It carried a gravitational disruptor, a device that was simple in concept but devastating in application. When activated near the neutron star, it would destabilize the massive gravity well that anchored the dimensional rift. The theory was sound. The execution was another matter. Jiwoo had to fly through gravitational forces that changed every microsecond. Forces that could crush her ship or tear it apart. No computer could calculate a safe path through that chaos. Only human intuition. Only the skill of a pilot who had been flying since she was 12, who understood how ships moved not through calculations but through feel. Dr. Bora fed her real-time data from the Pathfinder's sensors, but the numbers were almost useless. Gravity spike at 37 Mark 5. No, wait, it shifted. 41 Mark 2 now. I see it, Jiwoo replied calmly. Her shuttle twisted through space in ways that made her co-pilot nauseous. She flew on instinct, reading the gravitational flows the way ancient sailors read ocean currents. Harvesters phased in around her, trying to stop her approach. But she was too small, too fast, too unpredictable. They couldn't lock onto something that moved like she did. The human fleet and their council allies formed a defensive perimeter around Jiwoo's approach. They held the line against impossible odds. Ships exploded. People died. But they bought seconds for Jiwoo to reach her target. Daejung watched the tactical display. Watched the distance counter tick down. Watched his people sacrifice themselves one by one. Jiwoo's shuttle was damaged now. Hull breaches, life support failing. But she was close. So close. I'm at the deployment point, Jiwoo transmitted. Her voice was calm despite everything. Activating the disruptor. Get out of there, Daejung ordered. You still have time to escape. Negative, sir. Someone needs to stay and make sure it activates properly. Besides, I can see things from here. Things no one else will ever see. She paused. Tell my mom I saw the universe. Tell her it was beautiful. The disruptor activated, the neutron star's gravity well began to collapse. The dimensional rift convulsed, warping space in every direction. Harvesters were sucked back through the closing portal, their connection to this universe severing. Some harvesters tried to resist. They phased half in and half out, caught between dimensions. The competing physics tore them apart. Jiwoo's shuttle was caught in the gravitational maelstrom. She didn't scream. She didn't cry out. She just watched as reality bent around her, as she became part of the cosmic forces reshaping this section of space. On the Pathfinder, Dr. Bo-Ra watched her friend die. She pressed her hand against the display as if she could reach through and pull Jiwoo back. The rift collapsed completely. The exotic radiation it had been generating vanished. The impossible geometries of warped space-time smoothed out. Silence filled the Kresh sector. The harvesters were gone. The gateway sealed. The threat ended. But the cost. Of the 200 human ships that entered the sector, 47 returned. Commander Taewon was dead. Lieutenant Jiwoo was dead. 6,847 humans had died in the campaign. The numbers felt impossible. 6,847 people who would never go home, who had families waiting, who had dreams and plans and futures that would never happen. Captain Daejung stood on his bridge, looking at the casualty lists. He had commanded many of these people, had known their names, their faces, their stories. The victory felt hollow. Back on Earth, memorial services were held in every city. President Kyungsoo read the names of the fallen in a ceremony that lasted 6 hours. Every name, every person the Galactic Council convened one final time to address the crisis. The Great Hall was different now. The elder species no longer sat on floating platforms looking down at others. They stood on the same level as everyone else. Elder Veshtar of the Korvash addressed the assembly. His voice carried across the chamber and was broadcast to every species in the galaxy. We called them children, Veshtar said. We were wrong. They are not children. They are something we had forgotten how to be. Adaptable, creative, willing to sacrifice for others. Today, humanity saved the galaxy not through superior technology, but through superior spirit. He paused, his reptilian eyes sweeping the chamber. I have lived for 3,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed countless acts of courage and countless acts of cowardice, but never in all my years have I seen a people so young show such wisdom, such bravery, such honor. The Council voted unanimously to grant humanity full membership with military authority. Earth's defense doctrines became required study for all Council forces. Human tactics, asymmetric warfare, unpredictability, low-tech redundancy were now standard training. Ambassador Hana negotiated the final treaty. She ensured humanity would never be subordinate to the Council. They would be equals. True equals. 6 months later, Captain Daejung stood at a memorial on Earth. It was a simple black wall inscribed with 6,847 names. The wall stretched for 300 meters, every name carved deep into polished stone. He found Taewon's name, traced it with his finger, found Jiwoo's name below it. So many names, so many people who deserved to live. Dr. Bo-Ra stood beside him. She had resigned from military service after the battle, said she needed time to process what she had seen, what she had lost. Do you think they'll remember? Bo-Ra asked quietly. The Council species. Do you think they'll really understand what happened here? Daejung considered this for a long moment. The wind blew across the memorial, carrying the sound of wind chimes. Families moved along the wall, finding their loved ones' names. Maybe they will, Daejung said finally. Maybe they won't. But they'll remember that when their fleets vanished, when their technology failed them, when their ancient pride meant nothing, a species they called children stood up and said, no more. He turned from the memorial, looking up at the sky. Stars were becoming visible as evening fell. Somewhere up there, the Galactic Council was reshaping itself, learning from humanity, trying to understand how a young species had succeeded where elder species had failed. And that's enough, Daejung continued. We didn't do it for recognition. We didn't do it for respect. We did it because it needed to be done. Because that's what humans do. We survive, we adapt. We protect others even when those others look down on us. Bora nodded slowly. Taewon used to say something. That being underestimated was humanity's greatest weapon. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter floated a secret that would shake the galaxy. Engineer Jae-sung walked through a massive hangar carved into the heart of a hollowed asteroid. The space was so large that clouds formed near the ceiling. Row after row of warships stretched into the distance, each one bigger and more powerful than anything humanity had shown the Council. This was Forge Complex Alpha, the largest of 12 hidden shipyards scattered throughout the belt. For 50 years, Earth had been building these ships in absolute secrecy. Not even most of the human military knew they existed. The project had started decades before humanity made first contact with the Council. A military strategist named Sang-woo had stood before the Earth government with a simple argument. We are about to enter a galaxy full of alien species. Some will be friendly, some will not. We should hope for peace but prepare for war. We should build a hidden fleet that no one knows about, so if we are ever threatened, we will not be helpless. Most politicians thought Sang-woo was paranoid, but a few listened. Resources were quietly diverted. Asteroid mining operations that seemed civilian were actually military. Research stations that claimed to study stellar phenomena were actually weapons laboratories. Slowly, secretly, the Retribution Armada was born. Captain Yuna commanded the flagship of this hidden fleet. The ship was called the Defiant, and it was a Retribution-class dreadnought. It was twice the size of any warship the Council had seen from humanity. Its armor was made from quantum-locked metamaterials that could absorb incredible damage. Its weapons could punch through any known shield technology. Admiral Boram arrived at Forge Complex Alpha to inspect the fleet. She had known about Project Retribution for 10 years, since she reached high enough rank to be trusted with the secret. Now she walked beside Yuna through the hangar, looking at the assembled ships. "How many are ready?" Boram asked. Yuna checked her datapad. 1,200 warships, Admiral, all fully armed and fueled. We can launch within 6 hours. 1,200 ships. The Council thought humanity had 300. They were about to face 4 times that number, and every single ship in the Retribution Armada was more advanced than the patrol cruisers Earth had been showing to the galaxy. Kyungmi was the chief weapons designer for Project Retribution. She gave Admiral Boram a tour of the weapon systems. "We reverse-engineered every alien technology we could get our hands on," Kyungmi explained. "Then we made them better. Our plasma cannons burn twice as hot as Krillian weapons. Our missiles have 3 times the range of Saurian torpedoes. Our railguns fire projectiles at 1/10 of light speed. But the weapons were not the real secret. The real advantage was the Prometheus network. Hae-won had spent 20 years developing this artificial intelligence system. It was not like the simple AI that ran civilian systems. Prometheus was a true thinking machine, distributed across every ship in the fleet. It connects all our ships into one giant brain, Hae-won explained. Every captain, every pilot, every gunner is linked together. The AI calculates firing solutions, predicts enemy movements, and coordinates our entire fleet with microsecond precision. It is like having 1,200 ships all piloted by a single genius who can think at the speed of light. Admiral Boram understood the implications. The Council fleet would fight like 7,000 separate ships, each captain making independent decisions. The Retribution Armada would fight as one unified organism. It would be like a pack of wolves fighting a herd of sheep. But there was a problem. 1,200 ships needed crews. Earth had enough trained military personnel to maybe staff 400 ships properly. Admiral Boram sent out a message to all of humanity, asking for volunteers. The response was overwhelming. 3 billion people volunteered. 3 billion. Almost half of humanity's total population wanted to fight. Lieutenant Chang-min was a civilian cargo ship pilot. He volunteered immediately, and so did his sister Yoonji, who was a trauma surgeon. They both remembered the accident 20 years ago when a human colony ship had mysteriously exploded near a Council outpost. 4,000 people had died, including Chang-min and Yoonji's parents. The Council had called it a tragic malfunction. The decoded files from Ji-won proved it had been a deliberate test attack to measure human response times. Sergeant Wu Jin came out of retirement. He had served in the Mars Defense Force for 15 years before settling down to run a farm in the Martian valleys. Now he put his uniform back on and gathered his old squad. They were older now, with gray in their hair and grandchildren waiting at home. But they could still fight. Colonel Nari had been training fighter pilots for a decade. She assembled a wing of the best pilots from every nation and colony. They came from Earth, Mars, Luna, Titan, Europa, and the Belt colonies. Some were military. Many were civilians who flew racing ships or mining craft. All of them were angry. Dr. Sun Ho converted hospital ships into medical frigates. He knew there would be casualties. He prepared surgical teams and stocked supplies. He hoped he would not need them, but he prepared for the worst. The training was intense. Commander Dong Hyun had only weeks to turn civilians into soldiers. He ran simulations 20 hours a day. The recruits learned to fight in zero gravity, to operate in hard vacuum, to pilot ships at speeds where a single mistake meant instant death. Most importantly, they learned to trust the Prometheus network. It was strange at first feeling the AI gently guiding your hands, suggesting actions before you thought of them. Some people found it disturbing, but they adapted. They had to. The countdown continued. Outside the barrier, the Council fleet moved into attack formation. Their plan was simple and brutal. Drop the barrier, then immediately fire every weapon at every human settlement. The bombardment would last for hours. Nothing would survive. President Taeyang made one final address to humanity. Every screen on every world showed his face. He was calm, but his eyes were hard. The Council betrayed us, he said. They invited us as friends, then planned to murder us in our sleep. They thought we would be easy prey. They thought we would beg for mercy. They were wrong. He paused, then continued. Today, we show them what humanity becomes when you corner us. Today, we are not victims. Today, we are the storm. Admiral Boram gave the order. The hidden hangar doors in 12 asteroids opened simultaneously. The Retribution Armada emerged like a swarm of angry hornets. 1,200 warships poured out of their hiding places, their engines burning bright against the darkness of space. Captain Yuna sat in the command chair of the Defiant. Her bridge crew moved with practiced efficiency. Minsu was at the tactical station. Jiwan ran the science console. Young Ho handled communications. They were ready. All across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Changmin strapped into his fighter's cockpit. Yunji prepared her medical bay. Wu Jin checked his squad's combat armor. Nari led her wing into formation. Thousands of humans, many who had never been soldiers, prepared to fight for their species' survival. The barrier would fall in 6 hours. The Council fleet waited outside, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They did not know what was coming. They did not understand what they had awakened. Admiral Boram's voice echoed through every ship's speakers. All ships, this is Admiral Boram. Today the galaxy learns what we are. Today they learn that humanity does not surrender. Today they learn that we are not prey. We are predators, and they just made us very, very angry. The Retribution Armada moved toward the barrier, engines burning at full power. The wait was over. The reckoning was about to begin. The barrier generators were huge machines positioned at 6 points around the solar system. Each one was protected by heavy shields and automated defense platforms. The Council had built them to be indestructible. They believed nothing could threaten them from inside the trapped solar system. Commander Jin Woo led Wraith Squadron, 12 stealth fighters equipped with experimental phase shift technology. His ships could become temporarily invisible, passing through solid matter for brief moments. It was dangerous technology. Sometimes ships did not come back. But it was humanity's best chance. Wraith Squadron approached the nearest barrier generator. Jinwoo activated the phase shift drive. Reality bent around his fighter. For 5 seconds, his ship existed in a strange state between dimensions. Then he materialized inside the generator's shield perimeter. The automated defenses never saw him coming. Jinwoo fired a single missile directly into the generator's power core. He shifted back out of phase just as the generator exploded in a silent bloom of fire and light. Across the solar system, The other 11 Wraith fighters did the same thing at the other 5 generators. One by one, the massive machines exploded. The barrier flickered like a dying light bulb, then vanished. Admiral Boram did not hesitate. All ships execute Alpha Strike, full speed ahead. The Retribution Armada burst through the collapsing barrier at maximum velocity. The Council fleet was still in approach formation, not yet ready for combat. They had expected to drop the barrier themselves on their own schedule. The sudden collapse caught them completely off guard. Captain Yuna watched her tactical display. The Prometheus network calculated firing solutions faster than any human mind could process. Red targeting brackets appeared around enemy ships. "All weapons, fire at will," she commanded. The Defiant fired. Plasma cannons lit up space with beams of superheated matter. Missiles streaked away in swarms. Railgun slugs, each one moving at 30,000 kilometers per second, punched through space toward their targets. The Council's forward screening force consisted of 300 ships. They were Krillian destroyers and Saurian cruisers, meant to be the first wave of the bombardment. They never got to fire a single shot. The Retribution Armada's opening salvo destroyed 140 ships in the first 30 seconds. The Prometheus network targeted every ship simultaneously, overwhelming their defenses. Krillian destroyers broke in half. Saurian cruisers exploded as their magazines cooked off. The space between the two fleets became a field of expanding debris and frozen atmosphere. Captain Minsu sat at his tactical console, his fingers dancing across the controls. He targeted a Krillian dreadnought, the same class of ship that had destroyed his colony ship years ago. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold. He pressed the firing button. The dreadnought's shield collapsed under repeated hits. The final shot cut it in two. Lieutenant Changmin piloted his fighter through the chaos. His sister Yunji's voice came over his headset. "Changmin, you have 3 enemies on your tail." He did not panic. The Prometheus network showed him exactly where to fly. He dove through a cloud of debris, rolled his fighter 90 degrees, and came out behind his pursuers. 3 quick shots. 3 alien fighters became expanding clouds of gas. On her medical frigate, Yunji monitored the casualty reports. Human losses were minimal. Council losses were catastrophic. 90% of their forward force was gone. The remaining ships were retreating in disorder, but this was only the opening battle. Chancellor Vexier watched from his flagship, deep in the main Council fleet. He could not believe what he was seeing. His forward screening force had been annihilated in minutes. The human ships were faster, better armed, and fought with impossible coordination. "How is this possible?" he demanded. His tactical officer had no answer. The humans were supposed to have 300 outdated ships. Instead, they had over 1,000 advanced warships that fought like a single organism. High Prefect Tholan stood beside Vexier. His 3 eyes stared at the tactical display. "We have made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. "We awakened something we do not understand." Admiral Kavath commanded the Council's main battle fleet. He had fought for 3 centuries across 100 wars. He had never lost a battle. He looked at the advancing human fleet and made his decision. "All ships, combat formation Delta 7, prepare to engage." 5,000 Council warships moved into a battle formation that had broken rebellions and crushed invasions. It was a wall of metal and firepower that stretched across space. Kavath had used this formation to win his greatest victories. He believed it was unbeatable. Admiral Boram studied the Council formation. She saw the pattern, understood the strategy. The Prometheus network analyzed every ship's position and calculated thousands of possible outcomes. Then it showed her the weakness. All carriers launch all fighters. All battleships form spearhead formation. We are going straight through their center. It looked like suicide. The Council fleet would hit the spearhead from 3 sides, concentrating all their firepower. But Boram knew something Kovath did not. The Prometheus network had calculated the exact timing, the precise angle of attack, and the perfect firing sequence. Colonel Nari led 600 human fighters into the teeth of the Council fleet. Point defense fire filled space with a deadly light show. Fighters exploded, their pilots dying in flashes of fire. For every human fighter lost, 3 Council ships died. But the losses hurt. These were not just pilots. They were people. They had families. The human battleship formation crashed into the Council line like a hammer. Captain Daewon commanded the battleship Resolute. His shields flared bright as they absorbed incoming fire. "Full broadside," he ordered. Every weapon on the starboard side fired at once. A Saurian cruiser simply ceased to exist. The Prometheus network coordinated every ship perfectly. When one battleship's shields weakened, another moved to cover it. When an enemy ship began to target a carrier, 3 human destroyers would suddenly appear and eliminate the threat. It was like fighting a single enemy that had 1,000 bodies. The council formation began to buckle. Ships collided as captains panicked and broke formation. The careful strategy that Kovath had planned dissolved into chaos. Human ships were exactly where they needed to be, firing at precisely the right moment. Admiral Kovath watched his fleet come apart. 3,000 ships destroyed or disabled in less than an hour. His perfect formation was broken. His centuries of experience meant nothing against an enemy that seemed to know what he would do before he did it. "Retreat," he finally ordered. His voice was hollow, defeated. "All ships fall back to Rally Point Theta. Emergency jump." But Admiral Boram had predicted this too. Human ships were already positioned along the retreat routes. As council ships tried to flee, they ran into ambushes. The retreat became a rout. Ships jumped to faster-than-light speed in random directions, abandoning formation, abandoning strategy, just trying to survive. The Battle of Sol was over in 4 hours. The Council had lost 5,000 ships. Humanity had lost 83. The greatest fleet ever assembled by the Council had been shattered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Captain Yuna walked through the Defiance corridors after the battle. She passed crew members who sat quietly, processing what they had done. They had won, but the cost was real. 83 ships meant thousands of dead humans. The victory was not clean. War never was, but they had survived. Earth was safe. The colonies were safe. Humanity had faced extinction and fought back. They had shown the galaxy that humans were not victims. They were warriors, and they had only just begun. President Tae Yang called an emergency meeting of the War Cabinet. The defense of Earth was complete, but the Council itself still existed. Defense Minister Su Jin stood before a holographic star map, her face grim. "They tried to kill us," Su Jin said bluntly. "If we stop now, they will regroup and try again. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 50. But they will come back. We need to end this permanently." Admiral Boram agreed. "We take the war to them. We strike their military bases, their shipyards, their production facilities. We show them that attempting genocide has consequences." The plan was bold and dangerous. Half the Retribution Armada would remain to defend the solar system. The other 600 ships would jump into Council space and systematically destroy their ability to make war. Captain Yuna led the first strike force to the Krillian home system. The Krillians had been the main architects of the betrayal. Their shipyards orbited 3 gas giants, the largest military production facilities in the galaxy. These yards had built ships for 1,000 years. Commander Young-ho worked with Haewon to hack into the Krillian defense network. The AI specialist found a weakness in their security protocols. Alien computer systems were not designed to resist an artificial intelligence as sophisticated as Prometheus. The Krillian defense platforms suddenly turned on each other. Automated guns that were supposed to protect the shipyards began firing at neighboring platforms. Shields dropped. Targeting systems went haywire. It was chaos. That was when the human fleet arrived. Yuna brought 300 ships out of faster-than-light travel right in the middle of the Krillian home system. The orbital defenses were too busy shooting at each other to respond. "Attention Krillian shipyards," Yuna broadcast on all frequencies. "You have 30 minutes to evacuate all personnel. After that, we will destroy these facilities. This is your only warning." The Krillians scrambled. Thousands of workers rushed to escape pods and shuttlecraft. Yuna watched them flee. She had no desire to kill civilians. This was about destroying military capability, not committing murder. Exactly 30 minutes later, the last shuttle cleared the shipyards. Yuna gave the order. "All ships, open fire!" The bombardment lasted for 2 hours. Plasma cannons melted construction docks. Missiles shattered assembly facilities. Railgun slugs punched through repair stations. 1,000 years of military infrastructure turned into clouds of glowing debris. 3 gas giant shipyards gone. The Krillians had lost the ability to build warships. It would take them decades to rebuild if they ever did. Similar attacks happened across Council space. Human battle groups struck at every major military installation. The Saurian Empire lost 4 carrier yards. The Veltrix hegemony watched helplessly as their weapons research stations exploded. Everywhere the humans appeared, military targets were destroyed with surgical precision. But the human attacks were careful. Civilian targets were avoided. Planets were not bombarded. Cities were left untouched. Yuna made sure every broadcast emphasized this point. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to kill civilians. We are here to ensure you can never threaten us or anyone else again. The political effects were immediate. Ambassador Hyunji, now operating from a flagship equipped with diplomatic facilities, began receiving messages. The first came from the Veltorian Collective. Representative Kelvin appeared on the communication screen, his blue face showing obvious fear. The Veltorians did not want this war, Kelvin said quickly. We were forced to join the coalition. The Krillians and Saurians threatened us. We wish to negotiate peace. President Taeyang responded from Earth. His message was broadcast to every species in the Council. Any species that withdraws from the conflict and provides intelligence on Council military positions will be spared. Any species that continues to fight will be destroyed. Choose wisely. Within a week, 15 species had switched sides. The Council's military strength dropped by 40% overnight. Former allies provided location data for secret bases and hidden fleet anchorages. The human raids became even more effective. Chancellor Vexier raged at the deserters. He broadcast furious messages calling them cowards and traitors. But High Prefect Tholan was more pragmatic. They are not cowards, he said quietly. They are survivors. We started this war thinking the humans were weak. We were catastrophically wrong. The final attack came at Krillia Prime, the Krillian homeworld. Admiral Boram brought the entire Retribution Armada out of the shadows. 1,200 warships surrounded the planet in a formation that blocked out the stars. Chancellor Vexier stood in his fortress on the surface, looking up at the human fleet through the observation dome. His scales had turned a pale gray, the Krillian color of fear. His fleet was gone. His allies had abandoned him. He had nothing left but defiance. Captain Yuna opened a communication channel. Chancellor Vexier, you orchestrated the attempted genocide of humanity. You have 3 options: unconditional surrender, trial for war crimes, or orbital bombardment. You have 1 hour to decide. Vexier knew the humans were not bluffing. They had already proven they would destroy military targets regardless of cost. And unlike the Council, humans seemed to have unlimited ammunition. Their weapons did not rely on rare materials. They could fire forever, but Vexier had one final card to play. Deep beneath his fortress sat a weapon the Krillians had built centuries ago. It was called a world killer, a device that could crack open a planet from the inside. The Krillians had never used it because the Council had forbidden such weapons. But Vexier was past caring about rules. If he was going to die, he would take humanity with him. He sent the activation signal to the weapon buried 10 kilometers beneath his feet. Engineer Jae-sung was monitoring quantum fluctuations from the Defiance sensor station. He detected a massive power surge deep in the planet's crust. Admiral, they are charging some kind of weapon. Power signature is enormous. Admiral Boram did not hesitate even for a second. Yuna, precision strike. Take out that installation immediately. The Defiance main plasma cannon fired. The beam cut through the atmosphere like a laser through fog. It burned through 10 kilometers of solid rock in 3 seconds. The World Killer's reactor was still charging when the plasma beam hit it. The explosion was visible from orbit. A mushroom cloud rose from the fortress location, expanding for hundreds of kilometers. Chancellor Vexier's fortress vanished in the fireball. The World Killer died before it could fire. The Krillian government surrendered 30 seconds later. The Galactic Council chamber was a massive structure floating in deep space. It looked like a giant crystal palace, shining with lights from 47 different alien species. Captain Daewon stood in the center of the room, his heart beating fast. This was the moment humanity had waited for 200 years. Ambassador Hyunji stepped forward to speak. She wore the formal uniform of Earth's diplomatic service. Her voice was clear and strong as she addressed the assembled aliens. On behalf of humanity, we accept your invitation to join the Galactic Council. We promise to work for peace and cooperation among all species. The aliens around the chamber made various sounds of approval. Some clicked their mandibles. Others flashed lights from their bodies. The Veltorians hummed a welcoming song. It seemed like a perfect moment. Humanity was finally part of the greater galactic community. But in the shadows near the back of the chamber, Chancellor Vexir of the Krillian Dominion leaned close to High Prefect Tholan of the Saurian Empire. Their conversation was quiet and hidden from the others. Vexir's scales rippled with satisfaction. "The trap is set," he whispered. Tholan nodded slowly, his 3 eyes gleaming with cold intelligence. 3 months passed peacefully. Human diplomats met with alien representatives. Trade agreements were discussed. Cultural exchanges began. Captain Minsu commanded the defense platform orbiting Mars. He watched the steady flow of ships coming and going from Earth. Everything seemed normal and hopeful. Then the Council called an emergency session. Ambassador Hyunji received the message at midnight Earth time. She rushed to the communications center. The Council's message was brief and alarming. They had detected a dangerous biological contamination on human colony ships. For the safety of the galaxy, they were implementing an immediate quarantine of the Sol system. Admiral Boram was the commander of Earth's defense fleet. She was a veteran of 30 years of service. When she heard about the quarantine, something felt wrong. She pulled up the medical records from all human ships. Everything was clean. There was no contamination. She tried to contact the Council to explain, but they would not listen. "It is temporary," Chancellor Vexir assured her over the communication link, "just until we can verify the safety protocols. For your own protection." The barrier activated at dawn, Earth time. Captain Minsu saw it happen from his station above Mars. A wall of shimmering energy spread across space like a soap bubble expanding. It surrounded the entire solar system. Within minutes, the barrier was complete. Humanity was sealed inside their own star system. All faster-than-light communication stopped working. Earth could not contact any of their diplomatic missions on other worlds. The human ambassadors stationed at alien planets suddenly found themselves cut off from home. Trade ships approaching Earth's system hit the barrier and could not pass through. On the lunar research colony, Ji-Won worked late in her laboratory. She was a xenobiology researcher who had been studying Council scientific databases. Before the barrier cut off access, she had been downloading files about galactic medical protocols. Now she looked through what she had saved, searching for information about the supposed contamination. What she found made her blood run cold. The contamination was fake. The Council had created false reports. She dug deeper into the files, her hands shaking as she uncovered the truth. There were planning documents, strategy meetings, risk assessments. The Council had never intended to accept humanity as equals. They had invited humans to join so they could learn everything about Earth's defenses, technology, and military capabilities. Ji-Won immediately contacted Admiral Boram. The Admiral listened in silence as Ji-Won explained what she had discovered. When Ji-Won finished, Boram asked one question. "Can you prove this?" Ji-Won sent the files. Boram forwarded them to President Tae-Yang and the entire Earth government. Commander Young-Ho ran the Deep Space Monitoring Station Neptune 7 at the edge of the solar system. His job was to watch for incoming ships and scan for threats. 2 weeks after the barrier went up, his sensors detected something massive approaching from outside. Ships. Thousands of them. They gathered just beyond the barrier, forming a fleet larger than anything humanity had ever seen. Young-Ho counted over 7,000 warships from at least 20 different species. At the front were the massive Krillian dreadnoughts, each one bigger than a city. Beside them floated the Saurian carriers, bristling with weapons. Young-Ho immediately reported to Admiral Boram. His message was urgent. "Admiral, we have a problem. A big problem." The specialist Haewon worked in signals intelligence. She was an expert in artificial intelligence and code breaking. When Young-Ho detected the fleet, he also picked up encrypted transmissions between the Council ships. He sent the data to Haewon. She worked for 3 days straight, barely sleeping, trying to crack the encryption. On the 3rd day, she succeeded. The message she decoded was simple and horrifying. Phase 2 begins in 72 hours. All ships prepare for planetary bombardment. Target all human settlements. No survivors. The unified Earth government held an emergency meeting. Every leader from every nation and colony attended by video link. President Tae-Yang looked tired and old as he read the decoded message aloud. The room fell silent. "They are going to drop the barrier," President Tae-Yang explained. "And the moment it falls, they will attack. They plan to destroy every human city from orbit. Earth, Mars, Luna, the Jovian colonies, all of our outposts, everything, everyone. Defense Minister Su Jin studied the tactical reports. Earth had 300 warships scattered across the solar system. They were good ships with trained crews. But 300 against 7,000 was impossible. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Someone in the meeting asked the obvious question, "Can we negotiate? Can we surrender?" President Taeyang shook his head. "They do not want our surrender. They want our extinction. They planned this from the beginning. They invited us to join the council so they could study us, learn our weaknesses, and then eliminate us before we could become a threat." The betrayal was complete. Humanity had offered friendship. They had shared their medical knowledge. They had helped keep peace in troubled regions of space. They had done everything the council asked. And in return, the council had decided to commit genocide. The mood in the meeting was dark. Some leaders wept. Others sat in stunned silence. The military commanders looked at their tactical displays, running simulations, knowing that every scenario ended in defeat. Then Defense Minister Su Jin smiled. It was a cold smile without humor. She looked at President Taeyang and said 4 words that would change everything. "They do not know about Project Retribution." Admiral Boram leaned forward in her chair. President Taeyang nodded slowly. Around the virtual meeting room, the military commanders began to understand. Hope, like a small flame, began to grow in the darkness. The council had made a terrible mistake. They thought they knew everything about humanity's military capability. They had studied the patrol ships and defense platforms. They had analyzed Earth's weapons and technology. They believed they understood human limitations. But they had never discovered what humanity had been building in secret for 50 years, hidden in the asteroid belt where no sensors could find it.